find out what the rest of this phone is made of. The really blue aluminum part of the body is indeed aluminum. It is not covered by any primer or plastic. The LG G5 had to use a thick layer of primer to mask the seams, but as you can clearly hear, the Pixel manages to join the glass and aluminum with no extra coverings. This blue phone makes for a perfect backdrop for a lovely cottage house. Just add in some Bob Ross style Mystic Mountains and I'm almost finished. Adding in some key scratches as clouds, but the markings rub completely off. This really blue aluminum color holds up even better than the iPhone against keys and coins. That definitely deserves a thumbs up. Unfortunately, the deeper scratches do not rub off. But remember, we don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents. Onto the fingerprint of the phone, the thin little bar along the bottom is made out of plastic. You can tell it's plastic by the way it is, which is pretty neat. The larger portion of the back panel is definitely metal. Then you can add a little body to the wild hair and look, it's Donald Trump. The single cover was nervous, but the sound shows us that it is indeed metal. I thought ASUS was going to pull an LG G5 and make a plastic sandwich and call it premium, but they didn't. Thumbs up ASUS, the back panel of the phone is definitely metal. If you squint your eyes real hard and use all of your imagination, you can clearly see that this is a pony. A removable back with a non-removable battery. I'll have to see what's up with that during my teardown and repair video, if the Moto G4 survives the rest of my durability tests. The back of the phone is made out of rubber. Since it is easily replaceable, it's not that big of a deal if it gets scratched up, but as you can see, my razor blade still does a pretty good job of disfiguring the grippy material. Scratching on rubber doesn't have that same satisfying metal-on-metal sound we all enjoy, but I still managed to draw a happy little tree. And now for the back panel. If it's cold like metal and screeches like metal, we can safely assume that it's metal. Now, a lot of people think that my name is Jerry, which I can totally see why they would think that, since my YouTube channel is called Jerryrigeverything. My real name is Zach, though, and that's why my Instagram and Twitter handle is Zach's Jerryrig. It combines both my real name and my YouTube channel name. See what I did there? Now it's time to find out what material this phone is really made of. The blade of truth reveals the wonderful sound of metal on metal, which is one of the premium materials included in most flagships. One neat little life hack that most people don't know about is that you can turn any Android phone into an iPhone in just a few seconds. This might be a downgrade in some cases, but you really can't even tell a difference. And even along the back of the device, there is no ear-splitting sound of metal on metal when I carve into the switch body. If you're one of the few who recognize this symbol, leave a comment and tell me where it's from. It has to do with the Force, and I'm not talking Star Wars. I want to turn up your volume for this next part. It's real metal. Definitely one of my favorite sounds, and feels on a smartphone. Now today I'm going to switch things up a little. Art Class with Jerry is temporarily cancelled. Last month I had about 50,000 views on my channel from the lovely little country of Finland. And in Finland there is a tiny town that's actually called Nokia. It's right about here. Turns out Nokia originated in Finland. Who would have thought? If any of you are planning a vacation to Nokia, my map will help you get there. It's a good map. Probably the best map. I always have a few comments on every video wondering what happens if I take a level 9 pick to the glass of a phone. Remember, a level 9 pick is one step below a diamond. So let me tell you a story about a little guy that lives in a blue world. And all day and all night. And everything he sees is just blue. Like him. Inside and outside. Blue his house. With a blue little window. And a blue Corvette. And everything is blue for him and himself. And you want to know why this little guy is blue? Because there's no headphone jack on this phone. On this supermassive, thick device, HTC did not want to scrounge together the extra pennies it takes to add a 3.5mm headphone jack to the exterior. And that decision alone helps plop this device in the list of phones that I will not be using as a daily driver. The center apple looks like it's made from polished aluminum. My razor blade can definitely mark it up. But something normal like keys or coins should be just fine. The coin didn't add any marks into the mess. Now, Apple and Product Red are pretty interesting. Apple has been partnered with Product Red for about 10 years now, and by selling Product Red items in the store, they've raised more than $130 million for the Global Fund to Fight AIDS. That's pretty impressive, because Apple estimates that even $1 can provide 3 days' worth of life-saving medicine for someone. Another notable contributor to the Global Fund is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They've contributed about $1.4 billion since 2001. And if you know Bill Gates is donating to something, it's gotta be good. It's great to see two huge organizations contributing to something so impactful and life-saving on a global scale. Every penny counts. So thumbs up for Apple and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for contributing. If you're interested in donating to the Global Fund to Fight AIDS but don't want to buy an iPhone, Apple has included a link in the bottom of their website. Advertisement is, well, an advertisement, but my razor blade only tells the truth. The razor blade of truth is currently telling us that the bottom section of the removable back panel is made of plastic. The whole area surrounding the micro USB slot is plastic. Up at the top next to the headphone jack, which always gets bonus points for me, is also made of plastic. The only part that appears to be metal is the center back segment of the phone. Now, one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel 5 years ago was because the best and most environmentally friendly way to recycle a cell phone is to just keep it alive and useful as long as possible. And to make a long-lasting phone, manufacturers need to make them durable. The Note 7 was an incredible environmental fiasco. One of the many ways to help the environment is to not throw away useful things, especially broken cell phones. They are usually worth money, and someone somewhere can fix them and keep them circulating. Never throw away a cell phone, always recycle it. Hopefully the phone is pretty curious. Instead of antenna bands at the top and bottom of the phone, we have more of an antenna chunk. This black plastic section of the phone makes up a pretty large portion of the device body, and is definitely not the most aesthetic looking piece of tech. But it did get the job done way back in the day. Lucky for us, the silver portion of the phone is indeed real metal. Solid, cold, and quality feeling in the hand. And look, it's an apple tree. You can tell it's an apple tree from the apple there in the center. It's pretty neat. The back cover is made out of a thin, grippy, rubber-like material. A blackberry in real life is actually a type of aggregate fruit, which means that it's composed of tiny little individual fruits called drupes. Drupes are the little juicy circles surrounding the actual seed of the berry. BlackBerry, the phone company, chose the name BlackBerry because all the little black keys on their keyboard resemble the drupelets on the blackberry fruit. The same drupelets you see in their logo. See? It's a BlackBerry. The back cover is surprisingly resilient. Now, back when the company OnePlus first started making phones in 2014, they released the OnePlus One, whose name might have been based off the exclusive invite-only system that was required to buy one of their phones. The OnePlus 2 was also invite-only, and finally, with the OnePlus 3, they got rid of that invite system. You might have noticed that they skipped the number 4. Skipping the OnePlus 4 might be out of respect to some Asian nations who are superstitious of the number 4. The number 4's pronunciation is very similar to the word for death. Nokia has also been skipping the number 4 with their phones for the exact same reason. And that's a pretty valid reason. Nobody else in the world wants to buy a phone named Death either. Plastic up here. The opposite end of the phone has a headphone jack. There's also an FM radio, as well as an internal SD card slot inside the phone. It's nice to see Nokia producing devices equipped with consumer-friendly ports. It's gotta be a little awkward when this dumb phone has more features than some people's smartphones these days. The phone's complaining beeps drowned out the scratches a little bit, but you can tell the phone is pure plastic, all over. There's no screeching metal on metal. A little-known fact that starting with the Nokia 6110 in 1998, Snake was actually a two-player game, connecting two phones in real time via an infrared port at the top of the phone. Kind of like how the old Game Boys could connect to battle Pokemon, the Nokia 6110 would allow the phones to join their snakes and compete for apples in one game. And the first snake to crash lost the game. Pretty impressive for old technology. Unfortunately, this new Nokia 3310 doesn't come with an infrared port, but maybe we'll see that perk come back eventually in a future model. And it definitely sounds like metal. One awesome thing that I want to point out, if, by chance, the screen on your Moto Z2 Force ever breaks, Motorola has a warranty for 4 whole years. That's longer than Donald Trump's going to be president. Super cool of Motorola to stand behind their product with such a gigantic warranty. The gold pins at the bottom of the phone are for all the modular components that magnetically attach to the back, like a speaker or bigger camera. Scratching, the back panel is made from plastic. Like most budget phones, plastic is cheaper to work with than metal, and plastic is fine. While the plastic scratching sound isn't as immensely satisfying as metal on metal that we've grown to love, art class with Jerry is still a thing. And look, the beautiful white background is now a snowflake. But just like the plastic camera lens, a large orange and white snowflake isn't good for anyone. The razor blade, on the other hand, manages some real damage to the metal. This phone comes in 4 colors: polished blue, polished copper, tempered blue, and tempered steel. And while my particular phone isn't blue, I think I drew the Twitter bird logo pretty well. A little known fact is that the bird actually has a name, Larry. Kinda random, but now, with that random fact, you'll be really fun at parties. You're welcome. Metal on my keys. The anodizing is pretty thin though, so drops and razors might tell a different story against the OnePlus 5T. Personally, I was real good at math, up until they started mixing the alphabet all up in there. But don't even get me started on the number 8. It is one of the hardest numbers to divide in half. If you divide 8 horizontally, you get 0, and if you divide 8 vertically, you get 3. But according to my report card in school, neither of these were the right answer. Razor blade marks don't rub off though, so try to avoid doing your homework on the phone. A huge perk of owning a Pixel phone is the unlimited original quality storage for pictures and videos, online, up until the end of 2020. After that, you still get to keep what you've uploaded, but the deal only continues to include non-original quality picture storage after that. So it is a great thing, but it doesn't last forever, kinda like the dinosaurs. Rex was looking a little too much like Barney over here, so I added some teeth, and now he's looking a little better. You know, our class with Jerry stuff. Now, if you followed Razer at all, they make gaming hardware, and their gaming computer mouse line is pretty much all named after snakes. Since, you know, snakes eat mice. Kind of an interesting connection there. So here we have a cute little mouse friend. He doesn't have a name quite yet, so let me know in the comments what his name should be. He's looking pretty sharp. Maybe him and Rex from the Pixel 2 XL will get along. Apple this year. The color of the phone is super unique. The aluminum body looks and feels pristine. And look, I drew a graph of Bitcoin. Or, you know, if you flip it over on the side, it's Donald Trump's approval ratings, starting at birth. Down here, BlackBerry was basically the number 1 in the smartphone world before the iPhone was released 10 years ago. After that, they kind of basically declined to nothing, and then started their comeback a few years ago with the Android operating system integration. There have been a few bumps in the road, but it's nice to see them competing again. This smooth rubber back doesn't add a whole lot of extra grip, but it does keep the phone from sliding off a smooth table. First, check out the canvas size on the back of the W Noxiv. So there was a survey done of 16,000 people that found 72% of those people check their smartphones at least once an hour. It's impressive how addicting smartphones can be. A separate survey found 75% of people admit to texting and driving. Interesting to see how closely those numbers match up. And that's why I drew this hourglass. Maybe we don't always need to check our phones every hour. But if I had to pick one thing, it would be the way they advertised the back panel material. Nokia said the 7 Plus received 6 layers of ceramic feel paint. Ceramic and paint are 2 totally different materials. One could classify as a premium material, and the other one is attempting to use a premium buzzword to make itself seem cooler. One is a level 8 on Mohs scale, and one is a level 3. You can't really claim one feels like the other when it just isn't. My razor blade is a level 5 on most scale of hardness, and it was able to draw the YT freighter that made the Kessel Run in 14 parsecs. I mean 12. 12 parsecs. There probably is 6 layers of paint though, like Nokia said. It's pretty thick, and you can see a glint of aluminum through the deeper cuts. Either way, it's definitely still in the plastic realm. If you remember, Nokia is from Finland, and a little known fact is that the Finnish national cross-country ski team, which as far as I know is the only hobby over there, they were the first people to ever use a portable heart rate monitor, which was also invented in Finland in 1977. And now we use it all the time in watches and cell phones all over the place. So thanks, Finland. The back of the phone is covered in yet another layer of thick black rubber. I tried drawing the electron trajectory of an atom on the back of this atom phone, but the rubber thwarted my razor by hiding most all traces of scratching. The textured back material does provide substantial grip though. I'm a fan. The back of the phone has a much quieter sound than normal. Again, back here we have more polycarbonate, which is plastic. There is a version of the Pocophone F1 made with a Kevlar backing, but it's a bit more expensive, and I wanted to test the version that the majority of people will end up buying. The plastic back against my razor is almost silent, but I felt it was only fair to draw a poke on the back of the Pocophone. You might remember this little design from a social media app that old people use called Facebook. The Pocophone branding down at the bottom does have a shiny gleam to it, but the lettering is permanent and won't be falling out individually. When people normally think of a pixel, they imagine one singular dot on a display screen. But each individual pixel on your screen actually has 3 different lights inside, red, green, and blue, that light up alone, or in groups, to formulate all the different color combinations your eye can see. Kinda like little teams of friends taking groupies together. The sides of this phone. The back of the Surface Pro 6 has quite a bit of real estate. Microsoft has been pitching this tablet as a computer, mostly because it is, and not so much of a drawing easel. But it looks like art can still happen. I turned the Microsoft logo into a cute little turtle. Let me know what we should name him down in the comments. Back to the sapphire. It's a pretty incredible substance. The optically clear stuff used in technology, like on phone screens and camera lenses, is lab-grown, fabricated in a lab over weeks into a large clear cylinder called a boule. This massive chunk of sapphire is then bored out and cut up to make watch faces, or smaller bores to make camera lenses, or sawed into rectangular chunks and polished to make smartphone displays like the one here on the Kyocera. Tools. Bill and Melinda Gates write a letter to the world every year with their thoughts and goals, and this year part of the letter mentions cell phones specifically. I'll put the link in my description. They say that smartphones are game changers in developing countries, especially for women, giving them access to information, mobile banking, and a free place to learn new skills from sites like YouTube. Income potential improves dramatically as access to education expands, and cheap smartphones like this are perfect for that connection to the internet. A budget smartphone can do 90% of what a premium phone can, it's just not as quick or flashy. Mobile technology creates opportunities to fight inequality, lift people up, and increase that earning potential for people who have them, especially for women in poor countries who never had access before. It's a developing market for sure. Check out the annual Gates letter with the link in the description. It's kind of like a status update on the planet, written by one of the most influential couples on the planet. One thing that has improved with this year's model is the front of the tablet is now compatible with the Apple Pencil 1, also 4 years old at this point, everything sold separately. The backside of the tablet is also compatible with the Apple Pencil, if you believe in yourself, but I recommend something a little sharper. I asked on Twitter a few days ago what people wanted to learn from art class with Jerry, and Thanos was suggested. As somewhat of an expert in fine razor blade art, I'll do my best. Bald guys are pretty easy to draw. And here we are. Thanos eating an apple. Not sure if this is pre or post universal destruction, but it looks to me like Thanos did nothing wrong. One thing you can add to your tablet, before it gets scratched or after it gets scratched, is a debrand skin to break out of the normal smartphone mold and add a little bit of design flair. This phone appears to be using metal for the matte black bits. As you can see from my little shark drawing down here at the bottom, sharks have a reputation for being loners. But a lot of sharks are actually social with each other, sometimes hunting in packs, or just hanging out in groups called a shiver. A shiver of sharks. I guess you could say that this is a baby shark, mommy shark, and daddy shark do daddy. Okay, I'm really sorry. Enjoy having, but is not totally mandatory. The frosted portion of the Pixel 3a is made from plastic, so it's a level 3 slightly abrasive textured surface, instead of the frosted glass panel of the Pixel 3, which was a level 6 slightly abrasive textured surface. So we won't see the same material transfer on the plastic version of the phone that we saw with the more expensive glass version. The value Google is giving us with this phone is pretty incredible. Apple's cheapest phone, the iPhone XR, is still nearly double the price, yet comes with a lower resolution and no headphone jack. If you buy a Pixel 3a instead of the iPhone XR, you can also go get yourself an Xbox and still have money left over. The difference in price is insane. I'm all about making good financial decisions and keeping money in my piggy bank. Now, as you very well know, I'm one of the world leaders in razor blade cell phone art. It is a tough industry, you know, with lots of competition. And people everywhere are always asking me, "Hey Jerry, how are you going to stay on top? How are you going to take your art to the next level?" And I always say the same thing. It's the 3 P's of success: practice, persistence, and practice. I thought it was only fitting that since this phone is called the Red Magic 3, that we draw a magic genie on the back. And I think maybe my genie spent a bit too much time in the lamp. I also hear it's super hot in Agrabah, which brings us to the burn test. The pink anodized coloring of the 2019 iPod Touch is pretty brilliant. Pink is actually one of the most calming colors. Some jail cells in Switzerland are even painted pink in order to calm the inmates down. Kinda crazy. There are quite a few flowers that are also pink, including the beautiful roses. One thing you might not know though is that roses, if the flowers aren't picked early, actually have little fruits that grow underneath the flower called hips, rose hips. And the hips are totally edible. Full of vitamin C, they make all kinds of rose-flavored products, including rose hip syrup. I haven't tried rose-flavored syrup before, but now I totally want to. The secret to rose hip syrup is to start up a flame. Panels where we would normally see glass, this Flexi Boy has large plastic rectangles. The phone is heavy enough that initially I thought the panels were made of glass, but it is not. My razor blade's making short work of the surface, which is actually really good news for us, because now I get to tell you more about this vile little cicada bug that Royole is so proudly naming their phone after. Now, I don't care about most bugs. They don't bother me, I don't bother them. But cicadas are in a realm all of their own. These cousins of crickets swarm out of the ground every 13 years. Then they shed their crunchy, potato chip skin like a snake, grow wings on either side of their body, and then cicadas make an incredibly loud, incessant noise by vibrating membranes on their abdomen. That's more annoying than any sound I've ever made. Then the cicadas go lay their eggs in tree branches, which kills the branch, making it fall to the ground, where the baby bugs can crawl out into the ground and wait for another 13 years before they can pop out and start the whole process all over again. This is a true story. The cicada wings are slightly separated from one another, like the folds of this phone, so I can kinda see why they're named after each other, but still, gross. When I first pulled the Samsung A50 out of the box, I thought for sure it had a glass panel on the back, but as we know, razor blades can't hurt glass. This psychedelic back panel is made from plastic. I'm impressed Samsung could pack so much reflective color into this one plastic panel. One thing that's been on my mind a lot lately, since my personal phone is now over 2 years old and I'm debating buying another one, is that there's really no reason to ever buy a $1,000 phone. With so many powerful, feature-rich, mid-range smartphones on the market right now, the only reason to ever spend that much money on a smartphone is if you A, use it for work, or B, if your hobby is buying rapidly depreciating fashion statements. Smartphones lose their value pretty quick. The easiest way to save money is buying last year's $1,000 phone for $500 this year, or, just buying a mid-range phone. My chameleon buddy agrees with those economics. Smartphone prices change faster than this guy changes color. What should we name him? Let me know down in the comments. What is this? A headphone jack? Thumbs up for that. Google previously killed the jack, which was pretty whack. They got a bunch of flack, borderline attacks for following Apple's pack and lacking the jack, but it's good to see it now back. Google should get a stack of lilac plaques for that. Having the jack back system is plastic, but has a rougher texture. I attempted a small art class with Jerry, but we're not off to a good start this year. With every phone recently being made out of glass, I'm just out of practice. This was supposed to be one of those super mushrooms from the game. Anyway, I'm probably going to get some heat for that. Fun fact, there's actually been a light bulb burning in Livermore, California, almost non-stop for the past 117 years. It's called the Centennial Light. Most of the wear and tear on light bulbs comes from turning them off and on, and not just by leaving them lit. LED bulbs, of course, last about 50 times longer than a normal incandescent. But still, 117 years is very impressive. Congrats to Livermore, California. Speaking of telephoto camera for a unique perspective. After all the craziness that's gone on in 2020, I decided it might be best if art class with Jerry was something non-controversial. I could just draw something we could all universally agree on, like how candy corn is the best tasting candy of the holidays. You can let me know how much you like candy corn down in the comments. There is no metallic layer on the back of the Pixel 4a, it is all pure plastic. The last few phones that I've tested have all had Sony is really good at making cameras. It's kind of their thing. The NFC pad is located in the center of the back panel, right underneath this symbol here. There is no wireless charging. Now, Sony has been around for a really long time. They are one of the largest companies in the world. They've got their logo subtly recessed into the back of the phone. One of Sony's very first products they ever made was a transistor radio back in 1955. Then in 1957, they made the world's smallest portable radio that really took off, putting Sony on the map. The name Sony is derived from the Latin word for sound, which makes sense since they were, making radios. Before all that, though, one of their very first products ever was a rice cooker, which is what you see here. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Personally, I for one am glad Sony branched out and explored new markets. The back panel of the experience, in reality, it's also made from plastic. Plastic isn't bad, of course. Well, on cell phones at least. Single-use plastics from restaurants, grocery stores, and gas stations are pretty much destroying the planet. I mean, it's kind of strange to think that every toothbrush you've ever used is still sitting in a landfill somewhere. But that's a video for a different day. Plastics on cell phones doesn't mean it's inherently weaker. We've had just as many metal phones snap in half as plastic phones have. Here on my channel, it could go either way. Just a roll of the dice. And we're here to see which way it falls. Moving on, a headphone jack. Just another example of a budget phone where you pay less and get more features than a flagship. When I first pulled this phone out of the box, I thought it was made of glass, but it turns out that's not the case. I wasn't allowed to play a whole lot of video games growing up. Apparently, going outside and reading a book are more constructive and conducive to having healthy hobbies as an adult. That turned out real good. One game I was allowed to play, though, was Frogger. Which I think matches perfectly with Realme's Dare to Leap slogan on the back. We'll call him Craig, and he's from Chernobyl. While this is a budget phone, one of its most impressive attributes is a 108 megapixel sensor, up to a 4 megapixel sensor, all covered by more sapphire. For reference, the lens covering my own cameras is just made from glass. Kyocera has spared no expense. You'd have to have a pocket full of diamonds to scratch up the display or the camera lens. And if you do have a pocket full of diamonds, I want to know why you have a pocket full of diamonds. One of the reasons sapphire displays are so rare is because of how hard it is to create. Sapphire is grown in huge furnaces at over 2,000 degrees Celsius for over 2 weeks, with constant helium gas running through the crucible. After it's cooked, you get a cylinder called a boule, which can then be cut into rectangular blocks that are used for cell phone screens or watches. Instead of drawing it on plastic, though, I could just show you. This is a super heavy, pure sapphire brick cut from one of the basketball-sized boules. It's worth about $1,000. And obviously smartphone fiber for a second. Carbon fiber is lighter than steel or aluminum, with 2 to 5 times more rigidity at the same thickness. Depending on the fibers, of course. That lightness and rigidity is why Formula One race cars are built mostly with carbon fiber frames and components. Even the drive shafts are made from carbon fiber. I've been following a YouTube channel for the past year or so called Dark Arrow. They are building an entire airplane out of carbon fiber. Super interesting to watch the carbon fiber cloth mix with the resin and turn into super strong compound curved designs. The strength of the carbon fiber comes from the direction that the fibers are oriented. Carbon fiber is great for two-dimensional loads that align with the direction of the fibers, but once you add that third dimension of stress, like the stress that would come from a bin test, the carbon fiber is just not designed for that. There is a long antenna line running along the top and bottom, and you can hear the difference between the aluminum and the plastic that allows signal to pass through. For the rest of the back, we have some good news and some bad news. Not too long ago, back in the 1970s, Africa had a population of about 1.3 million elephants. Nowadays, due to poaching and loss of habitat, the elephant population is less than a third of what it was back in the 70s. There are only about 400,000 left. Now, I'm not normally a save the elephants type of guy, but yikes. The good news is that Kenya has really stepped up their game and managed to double their own elephant population in the last 30 years. Nice work, Kenya. But that's just one country out of the 54 countries in Africa. I personally don't know how to fix it. But Apple is sitting on about $200 billion in cash right now. Maybe they can think of some way to help out. That would be pretty cool. It is a tricky issue since elephants are pregnant for about 2 whole years. I think she turned out pretty good. Now it's a conservative black color with some slightly holographic branding, and it also is made from plastic. Fine with me though, just means we get more art class with Jerry. Seeing the color-changing Noxiv logo, or axon depending on how you look at it, seeing it shift from red to green reminded me of the old American folklore stories about Johnny Appleseed. Turns out he was actually a real guy who went around the Midwest in the early 1800s actually planting apple trees by seed, since grafting was apparently against his religion at the time. Something about not wanting to hurt the trees. John Chapman was his real name, and he seems like a pretty cool guy. We should all probably be planting a whole lot more trees. The Axon 30 has a supermassive